the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week.
Hi, this is Keith Ellis, and this is Business Story of the Week.
Fantastic. That is our guest for today, Keith Ellis. And of course, I am your host, Joshua. And today's question is, how do we transform the impossible into the achievable? Well, Keith is the perfect guest to answer that question. Keith Ellis is the #1 superpower coach and the author of The Magic Lamp, Goal Setting for People Who Hate Setting Goals. His classic book has been taught in colleges and universities around the United States, translated into half a dozen languages, and has helped to transform lives of more than 100,000 readers across the globe. The creator of the 10x Superpower framework, Keith has 40 plus years in high tech sales, trading, and business development. He combined his passion for personal development with his real world experience to drive incomparable results for companies like lynda.com, LinkedIn, and Microsoft. He's packaged his experience and expertise in his upcoming book, X Superpower. What was impossible is now easy, and is committed to sharing his message with the world. And today he's going to share that message, his superpower, and how do we turn the impossible into the achievable. Keith, I'm pretty excited. I'm very excited for this episode. Thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Delighted to be here.
Fantastic. Keith, we talked about a little bit about the magic lamp there. I was very intrigued with the concept of the magic lamp because, might I say, it feels like I am talking to the colors and everything. It feels like I'm talking to the genie. Are you here to make our wishes come true? But more than that, I feel like it's more important that you're going to help us help ourselves make our wishes come true. But before we get into that, I ask the concept behind the magic lamp, Keith, what was a young Keith Ellis like? That's my question. What did the young Keith Ellis think about goal setting and achieving the impossible? Did the young Keith Ellis also hated setting goals?
I did. And
Mm.
the young is relative, obviously. So do you
Wow.
mean 6-year-old Keith Ellis or 19-year-old Keith Ellis? I got into what I would call the success literature
I see.
pretty young. And I've been
Mhm.
a success junkie my entire adult life.
Mm.
So I was probably a lot like I am now. Before
Wow.
that, not so much. Before that, I was the typical kid. I like to read comic books and eat junk food. That was pretty much the young Keith Ellis.
Well, that's just, I think that's every young version of us. We all love our junk food. We all love our television,
Yeah.
sitting in front all day, not a care in the world, because I think kids get to live that life. But as we grow older, as we adult, we begin to feel the need to have goals, the urgency to have goals. Because
Yep.
Keith, I don't think anyone loves setting goals. But why do you think that is? Why do we hate setting goals in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for it. In my case, goal setting was in my mind, was this formal process that was really uninteresting. And it required a bunch of discipline, I guess, that I
Yes.
didn't have when I first heard about goal setting. So
Mhm.
it was something that pretty much everybody, gave the nod to. Yeah, you got to set goals if you want to succeed. But doing it formally just kind of irritated me. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it comes down to. People do it informally, but they don't give themselves credit. If you go to the
Right.
grocery store and you make a grocery list, right?
Yes.
You get the milk and you get the eggs and you get the lettuce.
Yes.
You're setting a goal and you're achieving it.
Uh-huh.
It's the same process. And all I did with the book was I said, look, the conventional wisdom is too hard to swallow. Let's make this so easy that
Mhm.
anybody can do it. It's like falling off a log.
Well, I love that you pointed out grocery shopping because it's like you set out a goal, you have a grocery list, and then you got that list, and then you went home. And like you said, we don't give ourselves credit enough that we actually achieve such a small
Right.
goal. And
Right.
I think that's a big deal. I think that's a big deal that we don't give ourselves credit enough, but also because it's become so normal. It's become such a norm to our lives that we don't give it so much significance. But now, Keith, you talk about um making it simple, and that kind of task, that kind of goal is rather simple. And you talk
Yep.
about this in your book. I want to talk a little bit about the magic lamp. Why the magic lamp? What was the concept behind that? And how did it inspire you to simplify goal setting?
I was literally in the shower thinking, and thinking about things I wanted to do, thinking about goals I wanted to set, but not thinking of them in terms of goals, just thinking, okay, I want to do this, do that, the other. And I think I'd just seen the movie Aladdin for the 900th time or something. My kids were watching it or something. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if you could just rub a lamp and, the genie would appear and you could get your wishes, make your wishes come true. And I said, that's really that's a lot like setting a goal. I mean, if you take goal setting seriously and you say, okay, I want X and I'm going to go
Right.
through these steps and get to Y, and at the end I have what I want, that's magic. And I said,
Wow.
well, what if we just called it that? And then I came up with this 4-step process that I call the LAMP process, LAMP.
Mhm.
And the L stands for lock on. It's the first step in the process. And lock
See.
on means two things. It means you figure out what you want, which is
Mhm.
critical. A lot of people don't know what they want, which is
That's the
probably
problem.
the answer to your question, why don't more people actually set goals? They don't really know
Yes,
what they want. But then the second part of it is just as important. You have to commit to it,
I
to
see.
say, okay, I want $1 million, or I want to start for, the Denver Broncos or whatever, starting quarterback, whatever your goal is. And then you just forget about it and go on to something else. You don't have a goal there. There's no magic there. You haven't committed to it.
Mhm.
So lock on, L. That's what the first step stands for. The second one, the A, stands for act. Nothing happens till you take action. Simple.
I see.
Third step is a little tricky, and this is where I think most people get derailed. The M step stands for manage your attention. In
Oh,
this world, we've got 8
oh,
billion people.
come on.
5 billion of them are on the internet, and they're all trying to get our attention at the
There's no
same
way.
time. So
Gosh.
if you learn to manage your attention through this
Mhm.
process over a
Mhm.
period of time, because some goals take a while, then that's critical. And then the last thing, it's probably obvious, but again, it's where a lot of people fall down. The P step stands for persist. You keep going till you
Persist.
get what you want.
That's it.
I mean,
That's
it's
it.
like a baby learning to walk. How many times will a baby
Mhm.
try to walk before it gives up? It doesn't give up.
Mhm.
But we're all
Right.
programmed with that same instinct. We just kind of
Right.
forget it when we
That's
grow
it.
up.
That's very true. That is very
So
true. Like,
LAMP, it's super simple. Anybody can remember it. And that's where the whole magic lamp idea came from.
I love it because it kind of ties back to what I said. Because I think that is why we came up with the concept of the genie, right? Or like rub. That's why we love it so much because it's so
Yeah.
easy. It skips
Yes.
all that lamp for us. It skips that step
Yeah.
for us because you just rub it and then, whoa! I get 3 wishes. I get everything I want. No one
Yeah.
wants to do those 4 steps. Nobody. But I feel like if you truly want to achieve the goals, everything that you want to achieve in your life, you've created this framework to simplify how to get there, so to speak. And I think
Yeah.
the most important part is you created the framework as well. Well, at least for me, what I realized is you created the most hardest parts that people seem to skip over. It's difficult because people don't did like you said they don't even know what they want. But
Right.
that really stood out, like managing your attention. Because why am I not achieving my goals? Is because man, we are everywhere. Our
Yeah.
attention span is everywhere. But I think
Yeah.
you put it in such a simple framework that anyone can follow. Keith, how have you seen this work for a lot of people? I'm very interested in now. Of course, your experience is very extensive. You've helped a lot of people. You've released this book. I'm very interested in stories, like any short stories that stands out for you, where they applied the LAMP framework and it just achieved tremendous goals for them.
It's almost you can pick a story from almost anything. For example, I could
Right.
walk into a conference, and somebody will walk up to me and say, I read your book when I was in graduate school, and that's why I have this job today. I
Right.
love a story like that.
Mhm.
They figured out what they wanted, they went after it, they got this job. So that happens. Then
Mhm.
at another level, I met somebody once who said this was a retired woman who didn't spend a lot of time thinking about what she wanted from life. She had a great life. She lived her life. And then she read the book and she said, I got a dog. She said, I didn't know I wanted a dog. But once I went through this process, I realized that's what I really want, a dog. And I don't think she'd ever had a dog. And that's such a simple process. And she was so delighted that this had changed her life. So so they're kind of two extremes, right? One person changed their life by changing their career, changing their job, changing their income. Somebody else got a dog. And then everything in between. I mean, the people write books based on this simple process. I've used this process for years, and it really, it's the beginning of the story that leads me to the 10x superpower. Because after following my own advice, if you will, the advice that's in the magic lamp for a number of years and having, I think, really good success. And of course, the book was successful. After that period, I realized I'm making incremental progress. That's what conventional wisdom tells me to do. You get a little bit better every day, and over a lot of days, you've achieved something significant. That's great. Right. It works. It's wonderful. But I reached this point in my life where I said, okay, I want more than incremental progress. I want exponential progress. I want to grow exponentially. And I didn't know how to do that. And it drove me nuts because, again, I was a success junkie, right? All these years, all this learning, all these seminars I've gone to, and it never stopped. I'm still doing it, but I couldn't figure this thing out. And so I started working on it, started researching it. I kept thinking I was missing something. And it turns out what I was missing is at the heart of every success system I've ever studied, from Socrates to Tony Robbins and everything in between. Everybody uses a certain type of question. It's such a powerful type of question that I started thinking of it as magic questions. Because it was magic. It had nothing to do with the magic lamp. It's just my brain thinks in terms of magic, I guess. So I call it a magic question. And then I started reviewing all this success literature, and it was everywhere. Everybody goes back to these certain types of questions. And I took this into a sort of a framework, not sort of a framework, was framework, wrote another book called Magic Questions, which is now in its second iteration, Magic Questions 2.0. And that was wonderful and profound and powerful, but something was still missing. And what was missing, and this is just dawned on me one day, was that I wasn't dreaming big enough. We have this filter in our brain that says, okay, I can do this, this, and this, but this over here, this is impossible. So I'm not gonna worry about that. And we sort of all know about that. You gotta be realistic. We're taught to be realistic. You kind of get it beaten into us. And that's essentially the reverse of what we need to be doing. If we make our dreams bigger, we actually make our lives easier. And that's very counterintuitive. It's actually easier to go 10x, literally 10 times what you've got now in your business, in your relationships, in your health, however you define what you want. If you go 10x, it's easier to do that than it is to go incremental, to gain 10% or 20%. People struggle with that because it's so counterintuitive. It's so different than anything they've ever been taught, but it's true and it works. So that's what, so the magic lamp ultimately was missing that piece, right? That piece of it's the 10x thing that really juices you. It's the thing that really gets you going. So that's what the most recent book is about.
It's just fascinating. Fascinating, of course, because it's not just the framework that you created. You created the Magic Lamp framework, and that led you to the 10x framework now. I'm very interested, though. I just want to go back a little bit to the question. Could you give us at least one question out of all those powerful questions that you have, the magic questions, so to speak? What would be the right question to ask for anybody, for our audience and listeners out there, listening to this episode? If there was one question that they should be asking themselves every day, what would that magic question be?
Well, it's a type of question. It's a series of questions.
And interesting.
There's what I call the magic framework that essentially gives you a way of asking questions to get maximum results. Think of it this way. Nowadays, every conversation, every news story seems to be about AI, right? Everything's about AI. And I'm interested in AI. I came out of a tech background, so I'm a geeky kind of person. I'm fascinated by that stuff. And the more I learn about AI, the more it seems to come down to something called prompt engineering, right? If you can figure out how to ask your AI tool the right question. It'll give you some meaningful information.
Yes.
It'll write a
Yes,
book for
yes.
you, do a picture for you, answer questions for you. But it all comes down to prompt engineering.
Yes.
And I realized that what I do is prompt engineering for the brain. So questions, the magic questions framework is a way to ask yourself questions to get certain results, to empower your results. So you touched on this at the very beginning when you talked about what do you want?
Exactly.
So a wonderful question to ask yourself is, what do I want?
What do I want?
Right?
Precisely.
But there's some ways to ask yourself that question that matter. Like it should always be in the first person. So often we'll do it in the third person or second person. We'll say, well, what do you want, Joshua? And it's like, that's not you talking to you. But if you look in the mirror and say, what do I want?
I want.
That's a different question.
That's
but there's
true.
even more to it. Say it out loud. Your ears actually operate in a different area of your brain. So if you say something out loud and hear it as a question, you're engaging your auditory sense as well as your intellectual sense, your conscious. And then the third thing is stand up. Let your whole body get into it. Feel it. So this simple process of taking any question you want and making it a question, a first person question.
Right.
You have to be in the question. You have to insert yourself in the question.
Precisely.
And then do it out loud and then stand. Suddenly you are driving this question into your brain and the way questions work. I mean, this is my favorite thing to do in front of a group. I say questions are almost impossible to ignore.
Impossible.
And then I ask them a question. I say, what color are your mother's eyes?
Oh.
And the room goes silent because everybody goes internal. They immediately go, they can't help it.
Wow, literally.
They know I'm going to ask them a question, and they might even think, I'm going to resist this. I'm going to show him he's wrong. And then they realize, oh my God. And then they just go off and start thinking about their mom. It's amazing. Questions have that kind of power. And if you learn how to harness them, then you really are developing a superpower. So magic questions are really the heart of the 10x superpower, but there's a framework around it that sort of guides you into certain types of questions.
That's it exactly. I love it. I don't blame you that why you keep using the magic concept, because it truly is magical, right? Like, because there's magic in achieving your goals and finding that kind of strength inside you, and the magic of the questions of reaching in internally and engaging that internal power inside you, that inner strength that allows you to achieve all these goals, and finally tapping into that superpower. And of course, you, Keith Ellis, the superpower coach. Keith, talk to us about that framework, the 10x framework. What involves that kind of framework, and how do we take that now from the lamp to the magic questions and now to 10x and finally tap into our superpower?
So 10x is, on the surface, incredibly simple. It's all about thinking 10 times at a level 10 times higher than where you currently think.
Right.
And it starts with what you want. What is it that I want that would be 10 times more than what I currently have? And this is a real challenge for some people, because they start thinking about this and they start thinking, well, let's say, okay, let's start with income, because income's easy to quantify, right? Say, okay, I want 10 times my income. And then they start thinking, well, wait a minute, that means I got to work 10 times harder. And that's a non-starter, because we're already all, working full out. So the other part of this is it's actually easier to go 10x than it is to do what you're doing now. That's the counterintuitive part. So part of us is hearing, oh, you got to be realistic. And I'm saying, no, it's just the opposite of that. If you set an impossible goal, you make it easier for yourself to achieve that goal than if you're realistic. I know that sounds crazy, but
it's crazy.
The model I always use is this. We talked about this earlier. How many times will an infant try to walk before it gives up? It never gives up. It just keeps going till it walks. Well, that's an instinct, and that's programmed into each of us. And you think, well, that's a one-off. That's one exception, right? You say, well, wait a minute.
Okay.
What happened when you learned to walk? What happened when you learned to talk? What happened when you learned to read, to write? Wow. Each of these was impossible. Think about it. If you were an infant, you just learned to crawl. It was impossible for you to walk. Awesome. Absolutely impossible. And then you kept trying and you eventually walked. You learned to walk, and it was impossible for you to learn how to talk. Then you learned to talk. It was impossible for you to learn how to read or write. You didn't have what it took. And then suddenly you were reading and writing. So we have this succession, and it keeps going. Riding a bike. The joke is, it's like riding a bike. You never forget how to ride a bike. But there was a time when we thought riding a bike, I had older brothers. I thought it was impossible for me to do what they were doing. And they get in their bike and they ride off there, and I'm with my little training wheels falling over, and I'm thinking, this is never going to happen. And then it happened. And you couldn't forget how to ride a bike if you tried, right?
Yes.
What was impossible became easy. So we have this instinct built into us. We have all these examples, most of us, which we've never thought about. All these examples of how we've done this in our lives. Driving a car, same thing. I don't know about you, but my life changed when I got my license. I could take girls out. Life was great. This is incredible. Profound change in my life. But there was a time when I was the passenger watching my mom drive the car. It was like, how in the world does this happen? This thing weighs 4,000 pounds. We're about to hit a tree. I can't do this. So we have this whole succession of these examples in our lives. We don't know we're doing this. And then we come to where we are today and we say, well, I want this. But it's impossible, so I'm not even going to think about it. And the whole point is, that's what makes it worth thinking about. It's impossible. That's how you get yourself to the 10x level. When you say impossible, you don't mean it's physically impossible. It violates the laws of the universe. What you mean is, it's impossible for me. That's the way I think of me.
Wow, I love that.
So the way you think, it's about your capabilities today. If you change your capabilities, the impossible becomes easy. Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. I love that. I love you pointed out driving, because I was thinking about that same exact example. I feel like you never forget how to drive. I think it's always there. You always learn it.
Yeah.
It feels like instincts is part of our superpower, in that, or rather, the persistence as well, and the resiliency of keeping doing it is also a superpower, allowing us to jump from that mindset of thinking, when we say it's impossible, we're really saying like, I can't do it. But really, I love that, because all we have to say is like, hey, I've done all these things. I've done the nearly impossible things. It doesn't violate the laws of the world, but hey, maybe I can do one more impossible thing among all the other impossible things I've done in my life. Keith, it's a fascinating concept. It's a fascinating framework, and I love that you've shared with us today. Now, Keith, when it comes to, of course, you have your book, The Magic Lamp, and now your new book as well, upcoming book, The 10X Superpower, which I invite all our audience and listeners right there to check out Keith Ellis at keithellis.com as well. You are also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and everywhere. Keith, this is just something off tangent, kind of like trying to be a little more quirky and creative in my questions. If reaching your goals was navigating like a forest, what would be my compass? What would be the superpower that I should be tapping into? Be my compass to navigate through that dense forest of goals that I hate so much.
There's this, I think this came out of Alice in Wonderland. She gets to this crossroads and she says, which way should I go? And the person she's with says, where are you headed? She says, I don't know. And he says, then it doesn't matter.
Wow.
So if you're going into a forest, it all comes back to what you started the conversation with, which is where do I want to go? That's how you navigate. It's in here. It all starts in here. What I teach people, the Magic Lamp, Magic Questions, 10X Superpower, I teach people how to think about their thinking. That is the superpower. That's the heart of everything we've been talking about, is our ability to think. And I'm not sure we naturally fall into this mode of thinking about our thinking. We think, but we don't think about what we're thinking. We don't think, wait a minute, I'm having this thought and it's taking me in the exact opposite direction I want to go. What if I had a different thought? And now I can go in the direction I want to go. It's all about how we manage, how we think about our thinking. So that's the answer to the question about the forest. The tool is you figure out what you want. Then you figure out, okay, what's the next step? Okay, now I know how to get where I want to go. My advice would be, I wonder if there's anybody in this forest who can help me get there.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
Fascinating. I
so
love
because
that.
the thing, so that's one of the book 10x Superpower is 10
Mhm.
different breakthroughs. One
Right.
of them is thinking 10x,
Right.
thinking at that level. The next one is the power of who.
Mm.
If you think about this, whatever you're capable of, whatever your capabilities are, if you can add the capabilities of one other person, remember, you got
Mhm.
8 billion people to choose from at this point, right?
Mhm.
If you could
Mhm.
add the capabilities of one other person to yours, you end up with more than you started with. You end up with more than the two people together because our capabilities feed on one another. Okay,
Yes.
you don't have to stop with one other. You can do 10 others or 100 others or 50 others,
Mm. That's it.
5,000 others. If you learn how to collaborate with other
That's
people
it.
and add their capabilities to you and yours to theirs, then suddenly you have no limits. Suddenly, this whole
Yes.
idea of impossible doesn't even mean anything anymore.
That's it.
It's all about who
That's
can
it.
help you do it. So you go into a forest you've never been into. First thing I would ask is, I wonder if there's anybody who could help me
Can help me.
figure this out, help me
Fascinating.
get
I
there.
love that. It's almost like collaborating is also a superpower.
It
You know,
is
it's
totally a
it is.
superpower. So each of these breakthroughs, I
Mhm.
call them breakthroughs. They are all
Mhm.
superpowers.
Wow.
Together, they go into this 10x superpower, which is sort of,
Wow.
I won't call it the ultimate superpower. It's just kind of a neat package, right? It's a neat way to
Mhm.
think about your life. I've got all these amazing things I can do. If I put them together, then actually look for the impossible. That's how I
Mhm.
grow. I want it to be impossible. I call it the impossibility filter, the impossibility
Impossible.
effect. Once you start setting impossible goals, you change when you set an impossible goal in the future, you change your present. This is
Mhm.
another thing that is counterintuitive for most people. We think that our present creates our future, and it's the
Yes.
exact opposite. It's our future that creates our present. If you want a bigger present, imagine a bigger future.
Wow. I love that. I love that. It's just all, of course, again, I invite everyone to collaborate with Keith. You guys can connect with him on LinkedIn. Guys can just find him on Facebook. Go grab a copy of his book on Amazon. And the website again is keithellis.com. The book Connect Superpower is coming out really soon. Keith, when is it coming out? We're excited. And where else can we find you?
It's actually coming out in the fall. You can there's a so full disclosure. I got to tell you the bad news here.
Oh no.
I'm doing something that, as far as I know, has never been done with this book. It's a spectacular book. It has some stuff in it that is just mind blowing.
Mhm.
I'm charging $10,000 for it,
Oh wow.
for a book.
Oh, for
At first glance, that's totally crazy. But here's why this makes sense to me. Most
Mhm.
people in my business, I'm in the coaching business. I'm a
Mhm.
superpower coach. I coach people how to use these superpowers you and I've been talking about.
Mhm.
Uh, in the coaching business, what people do is they give away their book, or they say, "Here, take this book. It's almost free, or it's $20 or whatever." And
Mhm.
then they try to talk you into this expensive coaching program, which is great.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that. Very, very legitimate business model.
Of course.
I'm turning that on its ear and I'm saying, look, this stuff is so valuable that the book itself is worth $10,000. But
Wow.
here's the deal. If you buy the book for $10,000, I give you my coaching program for free. So you get a whole year of what I call 10x Superpower Coaching Goldmine, which is
Interesting.
one-on-one coaching with me, uh, team calls, workshops, all kinds of cool stuff, online video training, all kinds of cool stuff that help you bring next superpower to life in your life. So you get the whole program. You're not paying for it. I mean, you're paying for the book, and I'm saying that up front, right? That's a
Mhm.
big hurdle. Now, there's another reason for this, and this is what people. It's easy to miss this. You asked at the very beginning, why don't more people do goals? And you thought that the genie and the magic lamp were kind of cool, just like I did. But what I learned when I started teaching this to people is the reason we're fascinated with the genie is because the genie's doing all the work,
That's it.
right?
That's it.
But but when you list your three wishes, okay, that's where it starts. But then it's like, okay, now I got to actually get off my duff and do something here.
Mhm.
The magic to me is that you can actually accomplish whatever you set your mind to. That's the magic. It's
That's it.
it's not that bang you get
Yeah.
something. It's that,
Mhm.
wow, I can literally have anything I want in life. I just have to
That's it.
figure out what it is and go through these
Mhm.
steps. And then you take that to X, and it just blows the top of your head off.
Mhm.
So if you realize it's you who are doing the heavy lifting, not me, there is no genie outside of you. The genie is in you.
Wow.
The $10,000 for this new book is essentially saying, this isn't going to work if you aren't committed to it.
Wow.
So how committed to it are you? And if you're committed enough to fork over 10 grand, and there's a guarantee, and you get your money back if you're not satisfied, all that stuff. But if you're not committed to it up front, it's not going to work. It wastes your time, wastes my time. And there's a lot of one-on-one coaching in this program that I was talking about. So it's really important for both of us to understand it's about your commitment. I can give you some help. I can be your guide, if you will. I can be that person in the forest, right?
Of course.
Saying, hey, I can show you how to get through this forest. You have to be the person doing the work. And the money up front is me saying it's all about commitment. You committed or not. So you can go to 10xsuperpower.com, which is a website I have set up for this. And there's a quiz. And I call the quiz Next Reality Check. And it essentially kind of calls your bluff. I don't mean to say that in a bad way, but it's like, do you really want this thing, this 10x improvement in your life, 10x more money, 10x better relationships, 10x better health, whatever it is, however you define it. And it asks you some questions. And at the end of the questions, you get a score. And the thing will come back and say, congratulations, you actually are ready for this. Schedule a discovery call with me, and then I ask you some more questions, and we sort of get a chance to decide whether we want to work together, because it's really important for us to both want to work together. Or you get a score that says, maybe this isn't right for you yet, and then you get a chance to download an excerpt from this book for free. Just to, kind of wet your whistle and say, this is where we're going with this. You can take as long as you need to decide whether you are committed to changing your life. Not up to me, it's up to you. But maybe this excerpt will help. So that's what will be at that website.
Fantastic. And of course, the website, once again, is 10xsuperpower.com.
Yep.
Very, very fascinating stuff. Genie or no genie? Well, actually, the genie inside all of us is what's going to make it all possible.
Keith, you are the genie, dude. You got it right in there. Yep.
That's it. The whole time I was saying Keith was the genie, but the entire time we had the genie in all of us. But Keith, thank you so much. I'm very fascinated. I really, really enjoyed this. And one last bit of wisdom you'd love to leave behind the audience, what would it be? Take us home.
Well, think about this, what I call this impossibility effect. If you think of all these things where you've done the impossible. You learn to walk, you learn to talk, you learn to ride a bike, you learn to drive, all these things. Then think of other examples in your life, because you'll find them. I started doing this, and I came up with all kinds of examples of where I did something that was utterly impossible for me to do.
Right.
But I didn't realize the whole process. Once I figured out the framework and the process, now I can help people get there from where they are now. But you don't need me to do that. What you need to do is figure out, what is it that I want? Make it next what I've got now. And here's the test. If you think, I think I just might do that. I think I could do that. You're not being ambitious enough. I want you to go to the next step and say, now it's got to be impossible. I have to literally believe right now that I cannot do this.
Okay.
Now, commit to that. And here's where it gets crazy. Commit to something you can't do. What? But again, this is that instinct that we were talking about. That's how the baby learns to walk and talk and drive and all this other stuff. You commit. We commit as human beings. This is a power we have, I think. This is an instinct. We can commit to something we think is impossible. And by doing that, we start thinking about our world today. We commit to the future that's impossible. We think about our world today, and suddenly it starts becoming possible. And suddenly it becomes easy. It's a process we've gone through over and over and over again. And what I'm trying to do is help people see that and access it anytime they want to achieve whatever it is that their dream is. So that's something you can take away, the impossibility effect. You actually get benefit by committing to an impossible goal.
And that right there answers our bit of questions to start the show. How do you transform the impossible into the achievable? It's actually achievable in the end of the day. And actually, you achieve higher, bigger goals. because you targeted the impossible. You believe that the impossible can't get done. You went after it. Keith, thank you for teaching us that. Thank you for everything that you've taught us today. I I'm very fascinated. I invite again everyone. The website is keithellis.com. The upcoming book, X Superpower, you can find that on the website. Go check that out. There's also a quiz there, like Keith mentioned, 10xsuperpower.com. Keith, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for your wisdom and everything else.
I love this show. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Fantastic. To all our audience and listeners out there, of course, I hope you guys have a great day as well. I hope you guys have a magical day. Thank you for watching this episode, and we will see you on the next one. Bye bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.